I want to remind our audience real quick, I failed to do this in the intro. I've got a lot of questions for Andrew and Tina, and I want to encourage you to ask questions as well. We'll take questions throughout the program. So as soon as questions pop into your head, make sure that you're using that Q&A box to ask them. So I want to talk about why this topic matters right now, specifically given the fact that, it's still early days. I mean, you guys, like I said, 2018, 2019, getting started in the space, but a lot's happened even since then. So can you share some examples of maybe some recent biopharma therapeutic advances that have been fueled? And I know it's a big question, right? I mean, there are a lot of applications for this technology, but maybe just give us some flavor for some biopharma therapeutic advances that have been fueled by the application of computational biology, AI/ML tools. And Tina, I'll start with you.
All right, well, thanks. And I'm actually going to talk a little bit about Recursion here, but happy to also broaden out, because I think there's a lot of things going on in the industry. But one thing that's been amazing to me is that Recursion, what we're looking to do here is build this tech stack of drug discovery. And it takes a long time, as you well know, Matt, in our industry to actually translate these things all the way into efficacy data and as well as products. But we can see a totally different way that we can think about discovering drugs. And so this computational data and being able to build these layers of data, you mentioned building the Google Maps or the Google Earth. This is totally changing the way that the whole industry can think about the way that we do early drug discovery. We no longer need to think about this bespoke, come up with a hypothesis that's like one target and then do a lot of lab work directed at understanding how to specifically target one thing. What we can really do is we can build multiple data layers of biology, and in the same way that we kind of would navigate Google Maps to get from San Francisco to Seattle driving or something like that, we can think about how do we navigate these massive data sets of biology in order to take us to novel targets in biology. Once we find novel targets in biology, how do we navigate to the molecules that can actually impact those targets in biology? And so I think that it's almost, to me, a totally different way of even just thinking about how we enter in to the drug discovery process. And that's what these computational technologies has allowed us. Before we had this amount of data and the tools in order to navigate this data, we just couldn't even ask the questions in the way. We had to ask much more linear and bespoke questions than we do today.
Yeah. Yeah. Andrew, how would you respond to that question?
No, I think we're still really early at the intersection of ML and therapeutic advances. There haven't been any approved AI designed drugs yet. I'm cheering for Recursion. But we are seeing more and more high quality data sets released, which I think will continue to help fuel discovery. From a macro level, those data sets, and I think the general desire of humans to be impactful, is causing more data scientists to dive into the life sciences, which I think is a really great thing for the health of humanity, especially given the past that, the vast majority of data scientists work either in finance or trying to get you to buy more stuff.
Yeah.
I think another benefit of this is that it also fuels the demand for more curated data related to specific scientific questions. And then that sort of fuels the desire to build more ML models, kind of a self-fulfilling cycle of this data demand. In our area of antibodies, there are advances in structure prediction, specifically around the CDRs. There's advances in folding and conformation prediction, which should lead to better binding algorithms, which should reduce lab failures and then allow those resources to be better distributed. I think that we're also seeing algorithms that allow us to do things that we haven't been able to do as well in the past. Protein language models, for example, can help us identify functional mutations in biologics. There are other advances that allow us to represent antibodies in novel embedding spaces. And so it's not just limited by amino acid sequence. And that provides predictive nature of the different features of the antibodies, whether it be developability or function. My view is we're still early on, and we're about 20 years away from seeing most drugs coming out of AI systems.
Most drugs.
I think there's sort of this overpromise of AI, right?
Yeah.
These AI systems are both smarter and dumber than most humans. And I think sometimes we expect too much and too little. So where we are today, we're so early on, it's still hard to see the future. perfect.
As it relates to that, just a sort of a follow-up question to maybe crystallize the question a little bit better. As it relates to the application of these technologies in early stages of drug discovery and design, have there been measurable, I guess, efficiencies or gains in terms of the quote unquote milestones that early stage biotechs look at? I'm not talking about like clinical milestones, preclinical. But there are, I guess, maybe traditionally accepted or standardized timelines from one step to the next in those early stages. Are we seeing progress yet in terms of like the efficiency or the speed at which we're moving through knockouts, perhaps? And I didn't, Andrew, you're biggest on my screen, so I'll invite you to respond to that. I mean, can you point to any examples of like, boy, we failed a lot faster and got a lot more quickly to a promising lead as a result of these technologies?
Yeah, we've had some recent examples of that at Evolve, where we were able to generate functional antibodies out of the gate. So there was no immunization. There was no need to make a recombinant protein to actually perform that immunization. It was direct to 96 recombinant antibodies, of which some of which were functional antibodies, direct out of the gate. So if you could skip over those steps, which are long, inhumane, costly, and jump right into a functional molecule, that's a good jump, right?
Yeah.
Whether it happens consistently is, whether we see it consistently happen, that's another question. We've seen it a couple times, but we need to see it more times for it to be something that's sort of credible scientifically.
Right. Tina, I want to ask you the same question, because I look at, like I said, Recursion's got a pretty deep and broad multimodal pipeline of many mid-clinical candidates. I mean, in your experience at Recursion, have those candidates benefited in terms of speed, efficiency, development speed from these technologies?
Yes, and I think what we talk a lot about is the flywheel effect. And this is very much a tech term, and something that we experience a lot at Recursion is that every cycle, when you use these technologies, you get more efficient, you get higher quality, you get more out. And so the way we even think about, we're industrializing drug discovery. So the way that we think about the drug discovery pipeline is even different. We think about it as a series of workflows. And, for example, just to dial into the very earliest part of our workflow, when we're trying to come with insights, just a year ago, before the ChatGPT large language models came out, we used to have scientists that would look through scientific literature and figure out, as we're navigating this map of insights, and there's trillions of potential insights in like where there might be novel biology that would be disease relevant. And we'd have to have scientists to kind of navigate which of those insights and opportunities do we want to take forward and look if there's a drug discovery program there. Now, but that's inefficient. And so now you can have a large language model ingest, which we have done, all of the medical relevant literature, look for any of those insights that are already known. And that's exactly where we steer away from, right? So we're looking for the novel insights. I think that's an example of how much more efficient that process is now that we can have autonomously starting, basically, figuring out which even drug discovery problems we even start before we ever get out of the gate. And that kind of flywheel makes every single, you're cutting out as much of the noise, if you will, in the drug discovery process as early as possible. And I think that's and then every workflow becomes continuously more efficient over time. And I think that's one of the biggest opportunities in industrialization and once again, scaling tech companies. They talk about these a lot, these virtuous cycles of technology and how that results in increasingly more efficient, more cost-effective cycles over time. And we've definitely seen that in our 10-year journey at Recursion.